I bought the Insta360 X5, spending 100 days with it, putting it through several tests to figure out if this was as good as they say, if it was for me, and if this camera was worth it at all. You see, I avoided 360 cameras, specifically this model, the X series. I have a big fear that my clumsiness would break the lens and make me lose out on $400 to $500. But the X5 promised something different, replaceable lenses. So I thought maybe this time things would be different. Maybe I could document my life without fear of breaking these bulging cameras. Here's what I was hoping for out of this camera. Battery that lasts all day, handling water adventures, capturing stunning wide photography, performing well in low light, tracking me for vlogs, delivering smooth action footage, and doing it all without any headaches. Let's see how it actually performed. One of the main features that the X5 boasts about is 8K footage. But even without having an 8K computer monitor, I can tell you right now, you won't need one for this camera. Because when it comes to image quality and resolution, here's the real kicker. Yes, it does shoot 8K footage, but when you crop it down, you're looking at 4K quality at the widest angle. And when you crop in at the narrowest angle, like linear, you're getting more of a 1080p footage. I bought the X5 right before going to Hawaii, and I had the opportunity to go see sea turtles. But of course you can only get so close to the turtles without getting a $15,000 fine. So I thought that I could rely on the cropping feature of this camera. Fortunately, I was within an arm's reach without touching the sea turtle, but I was also able to see some sea turtles on the ocean floor. Unfortunately, when I looked at the playback footage, things just wasn't what I was hoping for. And overall, I was just thinking this camera is only really good for wide angle shots. Marketing says 8K, but after you try zooming in to capture that turtle, it's really more at 1440p at best. And if I really wanted 8K out of a camera like this, I guess the sensor should really be 16K, so that the final crop would be at least 8K. In fairness, the image is definitely better than the first generation of cameras that did shoot 4K and then cropped in much smaller, like out of the Insta360 Twin Edition. But I'm still hoping for a camera that can give you 4K output at the narrowest angle. So for now, this camera, it's an L when it comes to image quality and resolution. Better than what it was, but not what I was hoping for. But how about the battery life? Does it last a whole day? Well, if there's any time that you're gonna use the camera the most, it's on vacation. So when I was in Hawaii, I was recording in different kinds of modes and formats, full 8K, 5.7K, and also using it for photos. Although I did bring an extra battery, I ended up not using it at all and not having to change out the batteries during the day. Once I got to the hotel room, I didn't even need to switch out the battery then either, because I just went ahead and opened up the battery port here, or the charging port here, and just charged through a USB-C cable. Out of curiosity, I also decided to take this thing and see what kind of record times that I could get just here in my bedroom. Insta360 says it has a 208-minute battery life, and I believe that's for standby mode at the very least. But here are the results that I got recording here in my bedroom at the different settings. One thing to note is that when you do shoot at 60 frames per second or higher, you end up taking more battery life out of this thing quicker. So things like overheating are definitely prone to happen. But as you notice, the camera does tend to overheat after an hour or so. But the thing is, when I shoot 60 frames per second, I don't record that long. It's only maybe 1 minute, the max. I don't hold it against the camera for overheating for after an hour of record time. Practically speaking, most of my days in Hawaii with this camera, I ended up with at least 20% battery life by the end of the day. For me, that's a W. But great battery life means nothing if the actual experience is frustrating. You see, the other big reason why I bought this camera was because when you set it to Insta frame mode, not only does it allow the camera to capture 360 footage, but it also gives you a flattened version that tracks you in the frame. So you get a flattened video footage and a 360 footage without having to spend extra time in post. Do note that when you use this mode, you won't be shooting at 8K, but 5.7K. Despite that, just the idea of capturing life around you without having to worry about framing later on is a huge time saver. I spent much of my time going through the 360 footage from Hawaii, reframing the footage, keyframing the footage, and still having to wait through all that export time when I batch exported everything. Although Hawaii deserves to be captured in 360, it's still a hassle to deal with all that footage. You're essentially shooting everything twice. Once to capture it, and then again to reframe it and compose it in post. Using the Insta360 mode just skips this process altogether, or at least shortens at least half to 75% of it. I shoot on a 512GB micro SD card, so I can definitely have all the room for 360 footage and flat-end footage as well. But if you're conscientious of space, then you may want to consider switching back and forth between 360 mode and single lens mode. If you've got like 5 to 10 shots that you know you want in 360, then go ahead and do that. But for the rest of the time, you may only want the single lens mode. Just go ahead and choose video mode under single lens mode. You can point the camera to yourself or point the camera away from you, and it's practically a vlog without having to reframe everything later on. About 90% of the time using this camera since Hawaii, single lens mode has been more than enough for me to do things like vlogging, POV shots, and just filming life in front of you. It's almost like treating it like a phone, switching back and forth between the front camera and the back camera. Saves time from editing footage twice. With all this considered, the workflow, especially with Insta360 mode, it's a W. Although the reframing of 360 footage is a pain, and even if you don't use Insta360 mode, the Insta360 Studio app, whether you're using the phone or the desktop version, has been a pleasant experience overall. 360 footage or not, of all the things that you'll really appreciate about this camera is stabilization. Now, straight out of the camera, everything is stabilized, so you don't need to worry about turning it off or on. If you want to turn it off though, you do have to turn it off inside the apps. When it comes to using this camera for sports, I'm not using it for mountain biking or doing any water sports. But I've stuck this camera out of our ATV in Hawaii, and the footage was remarkably stable. Yes, the path was bumpy to begin with, but the footage could have been even shakier. You'll notice that even if the footage is stable, you'll still have the up and down bouncing motion wherever you go. And that's just a characteristic of any camera that has excellent stabilization. But considering that you don't have a jittery image that shakes every step, well, this camera does do a good job smoothing things out, even for the smallest motions that would normally drive you crazy. Whether I point this camera at me for a vlog or if I use this as a BTS camera for a shoot, I can trust that the camera will hold the frame and keep it steady. That's a W. No matter what you film outside, the image is going to be excellent. But if you really want to see what this camera is made of, then you gotta see what happens when the sun starts to set. My rule of thumb with action cameras is that they're not gonna excel in low light. The X5 boasts of a 1/1.28 inch dual sensor. It's got its triple AI chip system to help with the image quality for the low light and cinematic slow motion, according to the website. I took it for a walk in the park during the sunset, and I used the regular video mode. Surprisingly, things were still looking great. The darker things become, well, the image starts to, well, you be the judge of it. Personally, I prefer to just use the regular video mode and control everything manually when it comes to the settings. And then when I go ahead and import it into my video editing software, I use noise reduction afterwards. For me, low light cameras are still an L, and this camera is no exception. I'm not really surprised about how weak the camera is in low light, but you won't be too happy if you're into water activities either. Now, I've already spoken about swimming with sea turtles in Hawaii, but I didn't talk about how difficult of a time that I had just operating the screen of the camera in the water. If you look closely, you'll see that this camera does have a tempered glass on it. And of course, maybe that's a problem. But I removed it, and it still turns out I still had a difficult time navigating through the screen and choosing my settings and just choosing a certain point of view when I was capturing it in 360. And when I removed the tempered glass, I took it and put it in my pocket. Just letting you know for all you ocean lovers out there. Ultimately, it took me about like 5 to 10 times just to get the settings programmed the way I wanted it to. But practically speaking, if you wanted things to get done, you should be using the hard buttons for the record and switching of the modes, turning it off, and so and so. Now, normally I would let this slide thinking that this is what happens when you take action cameras in the water. But the thing is, when I took my DJI Osmo Action 5 out swimming in the Philippines, I was able to navigate through the camera settings no problem. So it's actually just this having a problem in the water. So if you're jumping in the water, make sure that your settings are pre-programmed to what you want and stick with it. Otherwise, you'll be struggling long enough for you to see a shark. I mean, I didn't, but I felt like I could have. If you're using this camera for something like jet skiing, then you're all good. Better off above the water. So for me, underwater, it's an L. But let's go ahead and give flowers to the X5 for the one thing that it is reliable with, and that's auto tracking performance. The subject tracking when it comes to the Insta framing mode, yes, it's excellent. You want to take the snowboarding? Yeah, it's going to track you and give you nice, smooth footage. The technology in this camera will make sure that you are dead center or wherever you want to be in the frame as it goes ahead and navigates through the spherical lens. Even in single lens mode, this camera is still keeping me in focus, making sure that square box is around my head, and I have no complaints about it. It works as advertised, so that's a W. However, good tracking is useless if you can't hear what's happening in your videos. So let's talk about the audio quality. Straight out of camera, the audio, it's decent. Ideally, you want to use an external microphone that you could plug in through the USB-C port on the side to get more professional sounding audio. I use the DJI Mic Mini as my main wireless microphone lately, so I just attached that receiver into the USB-C port, and here's how it sounds compared to the in-camera audio. Audio test of the Insta360 X5. This is the stereo mode. This is the audio test of the DJI Mic Mini. It's right here. So this is what it sounds like when it's connected to the Insta360 X5. I also have the Rode Wireless Pros, but unlike the DJI mics, they do not have a sleek way to mount to the camera without buying a separate cage and clipping into a cold shoe. If you do plan to be far from the camera or want to have better audio when you deal with windy situations, well, wireless mics are going to be the way that you want to go, especially with their wind muffs attached. More likely than not, you'll always be dealing with wind when going outside, unless you got a good amount of trees blocking you. Overall, the camera mic is okay, but it's a W for allowing for wireless compatibility, even though Insta360 doesn't sell any. But of all the things that there is to love about this camera, it's got to be the ultra-wide photography. As someone who uses mirrorless cameras like Sony, well, buying a lens with an ultra-wide angle, it can be quite costly for like $700 at least and above. Not only is it costly, but it's also heavier to carry around. So when I was in Hawaii, I was just glad to be able to have something like this around. In the beautiful island of Oahu, everywhere you looked was just so beautiful. It was hard to take a bad photo. Definitely one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life. And there's some beautiful islands in the Philippines. Personally, my favorite place for photos was around the Koaloa Ranch, where Hollywood shot parts of movies like Jurassic Park and I think Kong. You were high enough and close enough to see the clear blue waters, while still being able to see the nice tall mountains. Setup for this camera was pretty quick for selfies. Straight out of the camera, it's got great colors, contrast, and sharpness for me. Plus, you also have the option to save the photo files as RAW files, which allow you to push the look of your photos even more in post. Now, do note that it does give you 72 megapixels when you use both sides of the camera, and when you take photos like that, there is some buffering to be considered in between each shot. So it may seem like forever every time that you want to take a photo, but you're still waiting for the last one to finish processing. Another benefit of taking photos with this camera is that you can go ahead and edit the view of the angle, whether you want it ultra wide or linear or however you want in between, just in the Insta360 Studio app, whether on your phone or on the desktop. This option also applies if you want to go ahead and use single lens mode for taking photos, because it is quicker when you shoot with 36 megapixels for a single lens, and go ahead and manipulate that afterwards. The photos that come out of this device gives it a W. But before making a final decision about this camera, here's some honorable mentions I just wanted to include. The twisting feature. If you want to make controlling your camera easier, there is a voice control option. But what they added to this camera to make it even better is that when you attach a selfie stick, all you need to do is quickly twist the camera. It starts and stops recording. So twist it and it starts, and then when you're done, twist it again and it stops. No more having to lower your camera just to hit record and then bring it back up, and then do it again just to hit stop. But even indoors, this camera is still handy because if you're relying on your fancy MacBook Pro as a webcam, yeah, that can be cute. But lately, any camera that you buy is going to be way better than that one. So just take this camera, plug it into your computer, select the X5 as your camera device, and it's good to go. I would just recommend that you use the single lens mode with the face detection turned on so that your head isn't so tiny for a Zoom call. But when you're done with your Zoom call and you go away from your desk to have your best life, well, there's also another feature that you AI Highlights Assistant. This allows for the camera to analyze your clips for the best highlights, and I think this is cool, although I didn't use the feature much since I manually grabbed the footage for videos like this and just for my own use. But if you're someone who's new to editing and don't want to spend as much time, I think turning that feature on is quite valuable for you. As feature-packed as this camera is, let's talk about the price. What did it cost and what alternatives do they have out there that you could consider? The X5 standard combo costs $549 US. While testing this unit out, DJI also released their own version for the same price, but it's got a bigger 1-inch sensor, yet no replaceable lens. GoPro has their Max 2 for $499 US, but less megapixels. Can't speak much on these other cameras that I haven't tried before, but if I was buying a 360 camera today, I might lean towards the DJI version just because I could easily connect to the camera with my wireless mics without using the extra receiver poking out of the side. It's just that if I break the lens, well, that's it for me. After 100 days with the X5, I'm pleased to say that Insta360 has stepped up their game, and the features are quite promising since I last bought one of their cameras. For me, this camera is worth it. And now that I'm starting to get used to 360 cameras a little bit more, maybe it can stick around, unless there's a better one that I should consider. Without a doubt, this camera is easy to use, but I made it even easier by using these accessories over here.